In this video, we're going to talk about how to multiply multiple term radicals. So when you're multiplying multiple term radicals, it's important to remember these three main things. First, you want to always use the distributive property. So you always want to multiply whatever's on the outside by all the terms that are on the inside. Then you want to use the product property. Remember, the product property tells us is that if we have radicals with the same index being multiplied together, we multiply the radicands together. And then you want to simplify whenever possible using the squares and powers chart. So let's try this example. So I'm going to take this 5 fourth root of y and distribute it to all of these three terms that are on the inside of the parentheses. So that's going to give me 5 times the fourth root of y times 3 fourth root of y cubed. Okay, and then I have that minus 5 fourth root of y times 7 fourth root of y to the 11th. And then I have plus 5 fourth root of y times the fourth root of 81y to the 7th. Okay, so whenever I'm multiplying, I multiply the coefficients, right? So I do 5 times 3, so I get 15, and then I leave the radical, so the fourth root, and then I multiply the radicands together. Okay, so I have y times y cubed. Y times y cubed is going to give me y to the fourth, so I have the fourth root of y to the fourth, which is going to simplify to just 15y. Now let's do the second multiplication. So I have minus, and then I have 5 times 7, which is 35. And then I have the fourth root of, and then the radicands are y times y to the 11th. So this is going to be minus 35 times the fourth root of y to the 12th, right? So, because remember, this is a y to the 1. 1 plus 11 gives me 12. So that's going to now simplify to 35. And then the fourth root of y to the 12th is going to become y cubed, right? Because 12 is divisible by 4. Okay, now let's do the last multiplication. So we have 5, because there's no coefficient on the fourth root of 81y to the 7th. And then we have the fourth root of, well, that 81y to the 7th times y is going to give me 81y to the 8th. Well, notice I can simplify here because I can take this apart and I can say 5 times the fourth root of 81 times the fourth root of y to the 8th, right? And so remember, the fourth root of 81 is 3, so I have 5 times 3 times the fourth root of y to the 8th. Well, that's going to be y squared, right? So 5 times 3 gives me 15, so I have plus 15y squared. So this is now my fully simplified answer. Notice that I cannot combine any of these terms because the exponents on all of my terms are different, okay? So I have to leave it as 15y minus 35y cubed plus 15y squared. Okay, now let's try this example. So once again, we're going to distribute this cube root of y squared to every single term on the inside. So I have the cube root of y squared times 7 cube root of y, okay? And then minus cube root of y squared times the cube root of y to the 7th. And then minus cube root of y squared times the cube root of 64y. Okay, so the cube root of y squared times 7 cube root of y. I'm going to pull out that coefficient and write it in front. So, and then I have the cube root of y squared times y to the 1. So that gives me 7 cube root of y cubed, which is just going to become 7y. Now let's go to the second multiplication. So I have the cube root of y squared times y to the 7th. So I'm going to add those exponents together. So I have minus cube root of y to the 9th. Okay, that's going to simplify because 9 is divisible by 3. So I have minus y cubed. Now let's do the last one. So I have minus the cube root of, and so here I'm doing y squared times 64y. So I'm going to write the 64 first, and then y squared times y. Okay, so that's going to be minus cube root of 64y cubed. Well, I can take this apart, right? So this is the cube root of 64, and then the cube root of y cubed. Well, the cube root of 64 is 4, so the cube, that's just going to be minus 4, and then the cube root of y cubed is just y. Okay, so remember, when you write your final answer, if you have any like terms, you can go ahead and combine them. So I have 7y minus 4y, that's going to give me 3y, and then 3y minus y cubed. Okay, if you're going to write it in standard form, that's going to become minus y cubed plus 3y.